What the hell is going on?
All right, guys, how you doing? Welcome to the Unafraid podcast. We have a new show.
Yeah.
I'm Eddie, if you don't know me, and this is my good buddy Josh right here. So we're doing something totally different. We wanted to change it up a little bit on the Unafraid podcast. To be honest with you, I was kind of missing out on a little bit of the tactical side of things, so we came up with scenarios.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about scenarios. So why scenarios? All right, I took some notes down and I'm going to read so we don't miss anything. All right, so why are we doing scenarios? First off, in my training, from what I've done, you could probably attest to this. Josh is a detective, by the way, and I'll get to his intro here in a second. But why do we do scenarios? Because it gives you that experience. It lets you know what your natural body reaction is going to be when you don't know what is behind door number 1, door number 2, or you're walking into a room. All right, so scenarios are one of the best ways, and this is true in shooting, in self-defense. This is one of the best ways. Best ways to figure out your fight or flight response in the real world situation. Real world. We're not talking about shooting paper targets. We're not talking about that kind of stuff. We're talking about, like, if it really comes down to it, I'm at point X, Y, or Z, and this happens, what is my body going to do? How am I going to react? So our goal, since we can't really, a lot of people can't afford to go hire a bunch of role players or do certain things. But what we can do is we can train our mind. And mind is our best weapon on a battlefield overseas, or right here walking the streets, going into the grocery store, or just protecting your house.
Yeah.
So Josh, if you mind, okay, what is fight or flight? We've all heard of fight or flight. What does the internet say fight or flight is?
Sure. I looked it up. The fight or flight response, it's also known as the acute stress response, refers to a physiological reaction that occurs when we're in the presence of something that is mentally or physically terrifying. The term fight or flight represents the choices that our ancient ancestors had when faced with danger in their environment. They could either fight or they could flee. In either case, the physiological and the psychological response to the stress prepares the body to react to the danger. In response to stress, the body's sympathetic nervous system's activated by the sudden release of hormones. And everybody, I'm sure, has heard of it before, adrenaline. So you get that adrenaline dump. This fight or flight response is just how you're going to react initially without thought when something dangerous happens to you.
Which a lot of people don't know what that is.
No.
I mean,
no.
I'm still put in situations and I'm like, oh gosh, wait, okay, react.
Right.
All right, so full disclaimer, we just had breakfast and I ate a huge chocolate chip pancake. So I can't admit, there it is. Nothing to hide anymore.
I was healthy.
You had multigrain toast, so boring. Okay, before we get into these guys, I'm just gonna be like, Josh and I are not lawyers. We are not lawyers. We are not lawyers. We are not lawyers. Every jurisdiction is different. All right, we're going to talk about general stuff. What you do specifically, that is on you. We cannot paint a perfect picture for every scenario. It is impossible to do. And I hate that word, but it really is. All right, so just remember that if you live in California, it's a little bit different than if you are in Florida or Texas. It's just going to be a little bit different. All right. Again, and we'll be saying this over and over again, situation does dictate. And here's what I mean by that. Is who are you with? If I'm going into a venue or somewhere with Josh, all right, it's a little bit different than I'm with my wife and my children. It's a little bit different, all right? Or if you're pushing a stroller, or if you're carrying a bunch of groceries, or it's nighttime, it's daytime. Do you have injuries? Are you in a cast? What are you carrying? Do you just have some pepper spray, or do you have a firearm? All these things, all these variables add up to how you are going to react. So if a situation pops up, we're like, hey, I will take it to the threat. You're not going to do that if you forgot your firearm in your sock drawer. It's just not going to happen. So you need to think about these. And this is why we train. We we train. It's repetition. It does not stop. All right. So you got to put yourself in different scenarios, different situations. Even when you're just walking into a grocery store or pumping gas, like, hey, if this happened, what would I do? Like that's training.
Yeah. And it's free. And it's easy, free. And you can do it anytime.
Exactly. And like we said, mindset, you guys know how big we are here on mindset. And mindset is the key, and every situation will dictate. So before we dive into the scenarios, I've got to introduce my friend. So Josh, like I said, is a detective here in Texas.
Yep.
You've been almost 20 years now.
Yep.
Got a lot of experience, a different perspective than mine from being overseas and dealing with certain savages. Yours is a little bit different, which is beautiful. So we're both going to give our input. It doesn't mean we are right. Josh is right or I am right. We are just going to get you're going to hear what my gut would tell me to do.
Yeah.
Because we have that gut feeling. So that gut feeling, what does that mean?
I mean, it's kind of everybody's gut feeling is going to be based on your own life experiences or training. You know, our response may be totally different from each other based on our previous experience or the training we may have had. It may be similar and it may be very different than everybody else's. And I think it's kind of important to play off that too, is that as we go through these scenarios, look, there's going to be, I have my experience. It is not universal. It is my own. And my response may be very different from maybe every other cop in the nation or maybe every other private citizen in the nation or whatever. It's my experience through my training, take it or leave it. And I think that it's just to get you thinking.
I think our victory lap about this whole thing is to get you, like you just said, I was literally just going to say to get you thinking.
Yeah.
We want you to think, because a lot of people are very complacent when they go from A to B, B to C. We don't want that anymore. We got to stop that. We need to stop the victims. We need to bring down the stats, and we need to arm ourselves. And it starts with our brain.
Yes.
Okay, so again, Josh is a good friend. We are taking these. So these scenarios are actually going to come from a company that I'm a CEO of, Contingent Group, at Contingent Group on Instagram, and Contingent Group on Facebook. We've been posting scenarios probably a little over a year, possibly 2 years. So we kind of took a little pause on them, and we just started them back up a couple weeks ago. So I asked Josh, I was like, hey man, we do these posts. Is there any way you can help us? I would love your perspective. So he's here helping us out, just giving his, just kind of assisting on this for the Unafraid podcast. So that's where we are pulling these scenarios. So you can go to these scenarios on Contingent Group and you can see the comments and it's there. And what the plan is of this whole scenario show, if you will, is we're going to post probably 1 to 3 scenarios. Some require 1 because there's a lot to talk about. Some will be 3. We're going to post them. And then after a few of them, we're going to come back here. We're going to do our podcast and we're going to discuss it and we're going to hash it out and give a little bit more perspective. As Josh said, as he said, is it the right perspective? I don't know. It just depends on you. All right. So, here is the first scenario. Okay. And this was posted, I think, about 2 weeks ago. All right, so this is scenario number 1 for the day. Here is the scenario. You gotta put yourself in this position for it to work out right. All right, so this is the post on Contingent Group. You're at your kid's youth football game, okay? Your child's team is playing their rival, and it is getting heated, especially between the parents. You know how it is, right?
Yeah.
Say a little comment, this one rebuttals, and you can feel the tension kind of building up, all right? You are in the stands with your significant other. And your other child, so now we got 2 children, and your other child, when an argument between a couple parents spills onto the field. All right, so we're arguing, and then it kind of spills onto the field. Then, all right, so let's pause there. All right, we got chatter going around, multiple conversations. You might be on your phone, which is probably what most people are doing. You're watching the game. There's kids running around the stands, whatever it is. And then gunfire rings out. All right. Gunfire rings out. Your one child is on the field and your significant other and other child are still in the stands with you. All right. So let's paint the picture again. We got one child playing the game of football right there. And then you are in the stands with your significant other and another child. If you don't have a child, act like you do. It's very good. Imagination is great for the brain. All right. So on that, what's your move? All right. So take in the atmosphere. You're really not paying attention. Your situational awareness is probably on the game or your significant other or your kid, whatever it is. There's a lot going on. It's a lot going on. All right. So Josh, I'm going to kind of pan over to you.
Yeah.
What's your move on this? What is your gut after reading that scenario? What does it tell you to do?
Sure. So kind of the idea of this too is like what is to think about what my gut would do. And then when we do this type of training, I get to think about what I would do just off the cuff without thinking about it. And then like, that's kind of the idea of this training. Now we can backtrack and dissect actually if that's a good response or not.
Which is somewhat considered a hot wash
Right.
or debrief, which just so you know. Sorry. Go ahead.
So my gut immediately is, I want to know, I mean, my wife would be armed. So she's always armed, which is going to help. But my gut is my wife and I, our fiance and I got this kind of sorted out already that she's going to take our one child who's with us in the stands and try to get to a safe location, hopefully the car, so they can get out of the area. My initial response is going to be get those two to safety, let them go. I'm going to trust her to take care of that child, and I'm going to go down to the field and try to get to the other kid. And again, everything's going to be, it's going to depend on the situation. If I'm going down to the field and I happen to encounter the shooter before I get to my kid, and I have a shot. If I have an opportunity to try to end that threat, I'm going to do it. If I get to my kid first, I'm going to get my kid and meet up with my fiance and the rest of my family out in the parking lot. And then me personally, now that I know that my kids are safe, I am going to turn around and I'm going to go back and try to address that threat to try to help others. Again, if that opportunity, my first honest reaction is going to be to protect my own first. Of course. If I do, like I said, if I get, and I hope I would get that opportunity to address the assailant first, I mean, that's going to help everybody. You know what I mean? Whatever is going to get my family into a safe situation first is what I'm going to do.
So just off of what you said that your significant other would be carrying.
Yeah.
And she would know to meet up at a place.
Yes.
Okay. So those are like what we call family protocols or procedures, which families neglect on tremendously and they should have. And it's as simple as pulling up to a venue. Hey, if anything happens, we meet back here at the car.
Right.
That's all. That took 5 seconds. Yeah. It's in passing. You do when we walk, or we're going to meet at that water tower, or we're going to meet at that huge tree that's by itself out there. Whatever. You guys get what I'm saying. Another thing to think about based off what you said, I just took some notes where you're saying that is you would address that threat.
Yep.
Okay. So let's picture this real quick. We got a football field, right? Bunch of players, people on both sidelines. There could be multiple games going on. Yep. Shot placement is so huge because you are responsible for every shot that comes out of that weapon. Yep. If you miss, it could nail another kid. It could hit somebody else. It might not take down the assailant, which is why we train. Right. Which is why we dry fire. Which is why we shoot, move, and communicate. Which is why we do these things. So that's just a couple of notes from what you said, and he's not wrong. What else? What else you got on that one?
The other thing to think about too is again, it's situational dependence. So if this is due to it, in fact, it recently happened here in our area where there was an argument between a coach and one of the kids' parents or family members, and that's what created a disturbance, which led to a shooting on the field. That's a different response than if this is an active shooter situation. If if you can tell that there's a heated argument between one of the coaches and somebody in the stands goes down there, and they get into an argument, and then a shooting occurs, that is going to change my response. That's kind of where I'd be going with the response that I just gave, where you're like, okay, I can see where that threat is. It's probably a lone threat. I'm going to go try to get to my kid. If I encounter him first, I'll take care of that. Mm-hmm. It will be a different response a little bit if it is more of an active shooter situation. Mm-hmm. Because if it's an active shooter situation, you're going to my mind is going to start going to, okay, this may be more pre-planned. This is not just an angry parent going out there. If this is a pre-plan, I'm now looking for explosive devices. I'm looking for additional assailants. It's also important why my spouse is armed, because I wouldn't put it past people to create a disturbance in the football area to get everybody running to the parking lots, and then there's somebody waiting in the parking lot.
Like a diversion.
Yeah.
Right.
So things do change. Again, everything is based on the situation, and it may change rapidly.
It's kind of funny you just said about the diversion is, we, after like a certain event, they always hold up what they call them, a vigil or whatever, like, hey, let's all meet up.
Yeah.
I was like, if I was a bad guy, I would do this, and that's the preliminary.
Right.
And then when I've got my masses, I strike.
Yep.
People don't think that way. And maybe that's just my demented mind. I don't know.
No, but good people don't go there, but the guys that we have to worry about do.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so I'm gonna interject with my courses of action on this. Just by the scenario, when I first read the scenario, my gut instinct, my initial what I would want to do is I would want to go to the threat.
Right.
That was my initial is try to pinpoint where it is and go to that threat. I don't know what that looks like, but that would be my priority, because the way I look at it is if I take out that threat, nothing else matters.
Right.
If I take him, that is the one thing that is causing the problem. If I take out the problem, if I cut off the head of the snake, we are done.
Yep.
On to the next, right?
Right.
So that's my initial. Now, we all know we hear a loud bang, we hear a loud shot or whatever it is. We might not know where that is. So I would go to kind of what you were saying is I'd be like, hey, go to the car or meet over there, whatever. Maybe I didn't do the protocols, but I should do the protocols. Like that would be priority one. But I would move. I would move onto the field, try to, if you can even find your kid, because there's going to be mass. I mean, there's people going to be running everywhere. You got to think about that. But I would be moving. So I wouldn't, this comes back to the fight or flight, right? Or freeze.
Yep.
Am I just going to be like, not do anything? Not doing anything? Well, it does nothing. I mean, it's kind of common sense, right?
Yeah.
You got to move. You have to move. So if I can't find the threat, I'm moving to get my kid, or maybe the best course of action is to get my family from the stands down. Or maybe there's someone wounded that's bleeding out. Maybe like, hey, you got them, get the kid on the field. I need to apply pressure or whatever it is. Like, so like this kind of goes back to the situation dictates, and you can what if this to death. Again, we just want to get you thinking, but I think we're kind of online, but I think priority, when I first heard that, where's my threat?
Right.
I'm going to you first.
Yeah. And that's just it too. Like it is a bit of a selfish response on my part. You're absolutely right. If you eliminate the threat, all of your family is safe. I just know that my initial gut reaction is, man, I need to make sure my kid's okay.
I think it's human nature.
For sure.
For sure. Yeah,
it is. But you're 100% right with your ideas too. Is that it's like if I can take care of this and it's a lone threat, everybody's safe. And that's kind of the idea. And I say that not because Eddie's a hero. I'm not saying that because Eddie just wants to. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that because I've had, like you, a lot of training where embedded in my brain, kind of like default is if there's a firefight, I'm going to you. I'm not turning away. Now, are there some times where I must turn away because I got a buddy that's hurt and that life's more important than neutralizing that because someone else can take? Right. Of course. But you got to think of it this way. All right. If you have a active shooter situation, and we can see this on the news pretty much anywhere, the difference between 20 victims and 2 victims is usually a good guy with a firearm. Yep. So there's still going to be victims because no one can predict when this girl is going to pull out a firearm and start blasting people. But when the good people rise up and use that self-defense to protect themselves and their fellow citizen, I mean, that is the difference. That is the difference when you're like, God, there's so many casualties. That's right. Because no one rose up. They all fled. Yeah. They didn't fight. And that's what we need to stop to protect each other. So, do you have anything else on that? No, not on that one.
Not on that one. All right. So protocols, we kind of mentioned them in the beginning. What are you carrying? All right. Like, what firearm do you have? Okay. When we could totally change the scenario, it's like, all right, there's 2 shooters or there's 3 shooters or a car drive, whatever it is. We don't want to give away too much. We might use these later. Medical. A lot of people are like, I have my firearm or I have a blade on me, but they don't have medical device or a tourniquet or at least a go bag. And if you don't know what a go bag, it's kind of like a resupply of like ammunition, maybe some survival food, some water purified tabs, some communication chargers, medical stuff, all kinds of weirdness that could go in there that you would keep in your car, that you could use that as a trauma bag if need be until help arrives at the scene. But does your family have protocols? Like, and it's as simple as like, what happens, like if X, Y, or Z happens, what are we going to do? Kind of like we mentioned, like, hey, we'll meet at this water tower, what we're going to do. Like, is there anything that you have in your family that you're like, hey, like this is a constant, like this is what we do?
You know what, it's funny. Even knowing all this stuff and knowing how good it is to be prepared, until I started preparing for this podcast and I read the scenario for the first time on Contingent Group, Jacqueline and I didn't even, that's what caused us to actually have that conversation, which is a little bit embarrassing. I mean, it is what it is.
It's reality of life.
Yes, but it is like, if for nothing else, it's nice to just get the mind working. And so, now we've kind of got our little plan together.
So if that happens, because you have children that play football.
Yes.
So now,
we know
it's already prepped in the brain. Done, it's already prepped in the brain. It's perfect. Big thing is these protocols, and I'm not going to be one over here and says, oh, my family knows what to do if this happens or this happens. I think the only thing that really I know we have down is if you move from point A to point B, I want to know when you leave and when you get there.
Sure.
So communication is like, I know if something happens, I know that they are at the mall or they are at this restaurant.
Yeah.
Do we do that every time we're walking in? Sometimes we do. Sometimes I forget because I've got a work email or I'm looking at my wife's butt, to be quite honest with you. I mean, it's just like, I just might not remember.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or kids are doing their kid things. So yeah, it's just like, it's a lot to do, but the more you do it, the more repetition, just like anything else, you're going to do it more often.
Yep.
And that one time you do it could save a life, your family's life, another citizen's life. And that is like good stuff. Anything on this scenario?
I think we're good on that one.
Okay. And you guys can see there's comments on Contingent Group, and you can, all this stuff you can, comment on the podcast, wherever you're getting it. All right. So scenario dose number 2. You want to take this one, buddy?
Yeah, for sure.
This is a good one.
This is a good one.
I like this
I
one.
Really like
this is really good.
I got a lot of notes on this one. Okay.
You took notes for this?
I took a lot.
I love it.
I took a lot of notes.
Look at that.
It just kind of came out.
Just to get you prepared your family when you go to a place, like you prepared for this podcast.
I know, it's so true. Let's see here. Okay, you're in your local convenience store, grabbing a 12-pack of your favorite frosty beverage when you hear a commotion at the register. Peek around the corner of the shelf, and you see 3 armed assailants robbing the clerk. One robber is taking cash out of the register, another has a gun pointed at the clerk's head, and the third is a lookout at the door. None of the robbers know that you're there. From there, what's your move?
My move on that. All right, so I'm assuming I'm the only person in this. We're just going to assume that I'm the only person here?
For ease, yeah.
Okay, that's what we put for the post. All right, so I'm the only person. There's 3 of them. They do have a gun to the gas station attendant's head, which I don't like. They don't know I'm there. My gut instinct would be to keep it that way. Mm-hmm. I would move to a defensive posture. I would pull out my firearm. I would have it at the ready. Mm-hmm. I would not be waving it around. I would not try to make commotions. I would try not to knock a bunch of chips off or cookies off the shelf, which is probably the aisle I would be in the gas station. I would try to remain very quiet. I probably, if I could, I would try to move to silence my cell phone, to not give myself away. And I would monitor the situation. That's what I would monitor the situation. And if it got escalated, I would most likely change that stealth mode to more an aggressive style, and I would go for the guy with the gun to the dude's head first.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about the guy. I feel in that situation, if we got a guy at the door as the lookout,
Right.
we got a guy taking the money. All right. So the guy at the lookout, I feel if anything happened, he's gone.
I would agree.
I feel like he's gone.
Yeah.
I feel like he's not going to stay in play. I feel the guy that's in the register, seeing that money, taking that money, feeling that money, is going to want to grab the money. That would be his priority, and not even have the situational awareness or SA of what's going on.
Right.
So I would take the guy's gun, the dude first with the gun. That would be my go-to. Now, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. What if, of course, but that is after just reading what is written on Contingent Group on that post, that is my gut instinct for that.
Okay. So if this guy, let's say he's been postured on his knees, and you got the clerk with a gun to the back of his head. Are you worried about, one thing that came into my mind was, are you worried about anything as far as you obviously are going to have to take a headshot?
Right.
Distance and stuff like that is going to come into play.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, would you be concerned about any like cadaveric spasm type thing where, if you have cadaveric spasm, essentially is if there's sudden trauma to your central nervous system, you can flinch, you can clench up. Would you be concerned about him pulling that trigger based on that response?
If I can be completely honest, in all shots that I've taken on human targets overseas, not once have I encountered that.
Okay.
And it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So no, I would not, I don't think I would think about that.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, if it is, let's just move to a knife, again, situation will dictate, and it's on the neck or something more, if it's like pressed, but if describe what you just said, like he's on his knees, I wouldn't, because in death, there's two ways, there's two things. There's a switch if you just shut their brain, right? We call it the T, right? You got the nose, you got the eyes, right? You shoot them in that area. And again, if I got the back of the head, what if you got this? Yeah, it could there's many things. Right. But that would be a switch. They would just drop like I like to describe it as a wet noodle. If you take a wet noodle of spaghetti, you hold it up and you drop it. If you hit that switch and take their life like that, that's what their body looks like.
You know what that's called?
What?
Flaccid paralysis.
That's what it's called? Flaccid?
Yeah.
I call it wet noodling.
Same thing.
I call it. I was like, dude, he wet noodled. That's we always say that. So there you go. What was that name again?
Flaccid paralysis.
Flaccid paralysis.
That is like to say flaccid on this podcast.
That is like done, right?
Yes.
Done.
Yeah.
All right. And then there's another one where you gotta we call it a bleeder. Bleeds out and life slowly goes away. And that's when you can kind of worry about, I want to get as much as I can. But a lot of times that I've noticed when that happens, they kind of look internally.
Okay.
As is, I'm dying. This sucks. I need mercy.
Sure.
Not so much the other way. Like I'm going to give you as much as I can until I go out. Not saying those fanatics are not out there, but in my experiences, those are the two things that I mostly encounter.
Sure.
And more the switch than anything.
Sure. So what is it that's causing you? So again, in this scenario, at the moment you are silent, right? They don't know that you're there.
Right.
What in your mind are you playing through that makes you say, okay, the difference between I'm going to be a good witness or, okay, now I have to act.
They want money. They're there for money. If they wanted to kill, they would walk in, they would shoot.
Right.
They want their money. Let them have their money. That can be replaced.
Right.
We have insurance. Live to fight another day. I think a lot of times we don't need to react to certain things. We need to let situation or the target develop. And then we make it based off of what we have with this scenario. I would definitely hold it. Now, what would constitute me to elevation of that, being more aggressive? Maybe them beating the guy were excessively. I'm not going to say like a shot would make me do anything, like a pistol whip or something. I don't know. That's a really good question. If they started like destroying the heck out of them, and maybe if the gun gets put away, maybe I would just rush at them, still ready to go. And if they fled, I would let that be.
Sure.
I don't need to. And here's the thing that a lot of people, I would just shoot him. Really? Until it's time to lawyer up
Yeah.
Until you're in court, until you have a civil suit, until that's on the table, I don't think a lot of people understand it. It's just not as easy as shooting someone. I mean, you can speak to that better than I can.
Well, there's a difference between being lawfully allowed to use force, and just because it's lawful doesn't mean that you should do it.
Right.
Just because you may or may not be justified in shooting shouldn't necessarily dictate. Tactics is what should be dictating your decisions. So I don't want to be thinking about a civil lawsuit. I don't want to be thinking about, am I going to be arrested or whatever? Because at the end of the day, if you take another's life in this manner, it is going to be homicide.
Right.
Okay? You're guilty of homicide. It's just, is it justified?
Hey guys, this is straight from a detective. Like, so this is
sure. Even when law enforcement unfortunately have to take somebody's life, it is still considered murder, right? It is just, there's things in the statute that call for that deadly force,
and
so
that
it has to be justified.
A lot of that depends on jurisdictions as well.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so unless you're walking around with your lawyer or your law book, I mean, it's just, again, pretty much across the board, if you feel threatened and you've given every opportunity to not take that next step in someone's life, you should be good. I'm not going to say you are good, because unfortunately politics come into play in this stuff, and certain outside elements. So I'm not going to, again, we're not lawyers, but all this stuff comes in, and it's, you know, there's another course of action which you would be great to touch on instead of like blasting dudes, because blasting bad guys is actually really cool because we don't need them on this world. But you have in your notes here, be a good witness. Mm-hmm. Like, we could stop it by being a good witness. And what does that look like? What does that mean?
So there's
and can I get a witness? Can we do it?
So the thing is that it's like, it's especially when you have training, and I think it's difficult, or those that were in the military or currently are, or law enforcement. So in particular, I can speak on the law enforcement side. When we go to work, it is our job to take it to the bad guy, right? So, you know, my response to things is very different when I'm at work, because I have I got a tool belt, I got all this cool stuff, I got backup coming, I've got body armor. When we're off duty, sometimes it's hard to shut that off for officers. So, you know, and guys, I need you to think about that. Your response does have to be very different when you're on duty versus when you're off duty. And part of doing that, it would be very difficult for me. But I do probably believe, unless forced, my go-to in this would be a good witness. And so what that is, like, you're just going to take a mental snapshot of these guys. And if it's easier for you to go top to bottom, it doesn't matter. You're looking for things: their race, their age, height, weight, their hair. Do they have any tattoos showing? Do they have any scars? Do they have any piercings? Do they have an unusual gait? Are they limping? Do they have an accent? Do they have a lisp? It's those type of, you want to look at somebody and be like, what sets them apart from everybody else? That's what you're looking for when you're being a good witness. You know, you want to check out their clothing. I always tend to pay attention to their shoes, because most people don't get rid of their shoes. So that's kind of one of those key things that I look for, is I'm going to take a snapshot of their mental snapshot of their shoes, because even if they take off running or whatever, they can be shedding clothes, but they're going to normally have their same shoes on. You also want to kind of take a look at unique characteristics of their weapons. Mm-hmm. So we've been seeing, you know, kind of an influx of these AR pistols being used in robberies. Mm-hmm. Be taking a look. They're using, let's say they have OD green frame and a black slide, or they have a black slide and a silver ejection port. Like, these are all things that we've experienced fairly recently on our aggravated robberies, where those little key things are how we're going to catch these people and convict these people. Mm-hmm. All these convictions come down to the details, because if our description is white male, 5'6", 120, brown hair with a black gun, okay, well, that's a huge part of the populace. Mm-hmm. But if somebody's able to tell us it wasn't a black gun, it was a black gun with a tan frame and a black slide, and he walked with a limp. It looked like his right leg was limped, and he had, a feather on his right arm. That's huge. That's where we're really gonna.
It was you, bro.
It was not.
Dude, we got him.
It wasn't me. Another thing to look for, if let's say you're a good witness, you're just hanging back, it doesn't look like anything's escalating, and they take off. Get up to the window and take a look at their car.
I was just about to say, what happens when they leave? Is our job done as a good citizen? Is it over yet?
No. Because you can, without again interjecting yourself into a situation or escalating. We never want to escalate a situation, right? So that's why you don't want to. In this type of situation, I wouldn't think it would be wise to jump out and be like, "Haha, surprise! Now you're escalating a normally docile."
Some of us may
into
do that.
Yeah, well, you might, yeah. But get out to the car or get to the window, take a look at what car they're getting into. Again, it comes down to the details. It comes down to specifics. Yes, a white sedan is great. A white sedan with black rims and a sticker on the back left bumper or damage to the right front. Like all that stuff is really what's gonna help us, you know.
And a lot of you are probably right now, like, my adrenaline just went through the roof. I just saw someone pull a gun, put it to someone's head. I had to pull out my weapon or pull out a tin can of Pringles because that's all you had on the shelf. And you're kind of saying, like, I want you to nail down all these details. But on that, and it is asking a lot, you can practice this.
Sure.
I'm going into the gas station or I'm going into a grocery store and I just did a scan of the produce section. I took a snapshot. What did I see? Or Kim's Game is another one where you've got all these items on a table and you get to look at it for 30 seconds, go away, and you could do something physical or something else. And then you write down what you saw and see how good you did. Like, you can train for this stuff and it could save a life. And if we can stop it from happening, I know you guys aren't going to do this, but I'm just saying you can. Like, just want to take those. One thing good about traumatic events is usually we capture it. It's a thing called PTSD, and you capture that image of what it looked like, and you feel it, you taste it, you smell it, and you see it. So you get that visualization.
And it's super easy. Everybody knows that if I were just to look at you for a second and look away, I already know that you're a white male, muscular build with a black T-shirt. Like, that stuff comes very kind of muscular build. That stuff comes super quick. Okay. But again, coming down to the details, I don't need to take time to be like, okay, remember he was a white guy. That's not, you don't need that because you're going to.
Onto the page. Yep,
so what
page.
I need to remember is he had a white wristband and a black wristband on his right arm. He had UNAFRAID tattooed on his forearm. Those are he had facial hair. Those are the type of things that you want to just take a snapshot because that's how what's going to help us catch them. Other points that I wanted to kind of make is just remember that 3-on-1 odds is tough, no matter how awesome you are at the range, no matter how awesome you are as military or cop. 3-on-1 sucks.
On that, if you are in that scenario and it's like last ditch effort, you have to fight. We take the biggest threat out first. Yes. So if I have and this is just an example, if I have a guy with a gun, a guy with a knife, and a yoked dude with a lead pipe, all right, I'm taking out the guy with the gun, even if he's at a further distance, because he is my biggest threat. Right. And then based off the other two, who's closer, that's probably who I'm taking out next. So you prioritize your threats and you take them down once, 1, second, third, whatever it is.
Right. And because you don't have to close distance with a gun.
Exactly.
Reach out and touch.
So if he's further away, like, oh, this guy's close, it doesn't matter because I mean, common sense prevails. But again, if we're not training for this stuff, it ain't going to happen. It's just it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Remember that standing down may save the clerk's life. Like, you're not escalating the situation that normally they're there for the money. They're not there to kill somebody. Hopefully. Right. If there's no immediate threat to the life of another, this may be the best option for everybody, is just to stand down and be a good witness. I will tell you one indicator for me that I have seen is once they have what they want, right? Let's say the guy's at the door holding the door open now. The guy's got all the money in a bag and they're starting to exit. If that guy with the gun repositions the clerk, if that guy's trying to reposition the clerk to another room and taking the time to do that, I'm acting. Because in my experience, they're about to go try to kill the guy. So
get rid of the witness.
yeah, like that for me is going to be an indicator of, okay, now I have to act, because they could easily leave. And if they were only here for the money, they should all be running out now, because it's time to go. They don't want to stay there any longer than they have to. If they're delaying staying on scene, that's a huge indication for me that I'm going to have to go act, because bad things are coming for that clerk. That's just something to that was my indicator to act.
It's good.
Another thing that y'all guys can think about is there's a ton of jurisdictions now, and you can check it out at fcc.gov, where you can text 911. So you could be sitting there as you're being a good witness, texting the local 911. Some, I believe, can get pictures. I don't know if all can yet, but you can at least be typing out a description directly to 911 and get help coming.
That's cool.
Another thing would be, if you don't know if your jurisdiction has text 911, you can always call 911 and have an open line, so they can hear the commotion in the background or whatever. It's not giving away your position. So I think that was the only stuff that I had on be a good witness, but just kind of some things to think about.
To be honest with you, I've never really thought about the witness piece, but that was like brilliant. Like I just learned stuff. I'm like, I didn't think about that. Like following them to the door, seeing when they go away. Like you need to be thinking about that. Like instead of like sitting back, oh, I'm glad that's over. Like your job's not done. Your job's not done. We want to help local law enforcement the best we can.
Yeah, and it's helping the next guy, the next clerk, because they never do 100%. It once and go.
I looked. I gotta pull up my phone here, and I apologize for that. But I took when we were at breakfast eating that pancake, I took this down. Listen to this. So I looked up gas stations. Remember that? I was like, how many robberies are there? Listen to this. There are over 32,000 robberies a year in gas stations, and nearly 11,000 of those will be robbed multiple times. All right, so 32,000. Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a ton.
That's a lot.
Yep.
It's actually more than a ton, because I think ton's like 2,000. So like it happens a lot. It really does. So it's a very possible scenario, and hopefully you can think through. Do you have anything else to add on these, by the way?
You cool if I go through my be the hero option?
Of course. Like that's what we're here for, man. Of course you want to be the hero.
You covered it super well. Just a couple things that I wanted to hit. I think that if it is go time, like if it is looking like, let's say he is getting the clerk up and repositioning, again, I'm telling you that because that's my indicator.
So this is kind of on Contingent Group. We posted the OODA loop, or you're aggressive, like white, yellow, orange, red. So being the hero, we're trying to remain back a little bit. We see that it's escalating. We're notching it up as well.
Yes.
Sorry,
yes.
guys.
I think my go-to would be the good witness. My second one is I have certain indicators that are going to make me now act. And so if you do have to act, some things that I'm going to keep in mind is that you're going to have to, in this particular situation, 3-on-1, you're going to have to be extremely aggressive. So if you've made the decision that now I have to act in order to save this guy's life, you have to be super aggressive, and you got to be landing shots quickly. That first shot is going to have to go to the hostage taker, the guy with the gun to his head.
Yep.
And make that, because you still got the benefit of surprise. So that better be a good shot. Make that shot and then immediately move on to the next.
And you can, the way this scenario is based up is you can maneuver to a place of cover and conceal, or at least concealment, to get a better shot. You're not just like, don't be the freeze. Like, no, you move. One thing that we were always taught is you're either shooting, you're moving, or you're communicating.
Correct.
And this can really apply to anywhere.
Yeah. So. And there's zero requirement to say, hey, freeze or stop or put your hands up. This is not the time for that. No. This is, you now have to act. You're shooting before they ever know you're there. When you take that shot, if you can, maintain at least concealment, because you want them, because those guys are not, like you were talking about the OODA loop, right? They're now observing, and they don't have enough time to orient yet. And the observe, orient, decide, act.
So their situational awareness is on their task right now. It seems like it is on the money.
Right.
So they really don't, because if they knew you were there, they'd be going to get you. Correct. Or doing something, whatever. So they're situational, which is great for us. They're preoccupied.
Yep. So now if I stay concealed, it's going to keep them in that observe portion of the OODA loop. You don't want them to get through, observe, and then they see you. So now they're oriented. Now they've decided they're going to shoot you. Now they're acting. You want to keep them in that observe section. So they're like, where did that come from? I don't even know what's going on yet. My buddy just went down. If you're able to do that, you're probably able to get some more effective shots on the other robbers. If you have hard cover, so the difference between concealment and cover. Concealment is bullets are going to likely come through it, but it keeps them from seeing you. Cover is most likely it's going to stop the bullet, right? So
hard surfaces, not like drywall, unless it's like bulletproof.
Drywall is going to shoot. It's going to go right through. Shelving in a gas station is going to go right through. If you can get behind the corner of a wall, it's probably more concealment, but get to the hardest cover that you can in order to continue to shoot, because you're expecting shots back, right? They just remember that they are able to move around and flank you. There's multiple people. We don't have that option because it's only one. We're not flanking anybody. So they are able to maneuver around. Again, my guess is they were there for money. They wanted an easy lick, and they're going to be fleeing, right? If not, if you're going to act, you got to be prepared to take on 3-on-1. And
just remember, when you neutralize or take out a target, and by the way, pause real quick. We're not telling you to go blast people and go crazy. We're not doing that. This is last resort stuff. Yep. If there are 3 or 2 or 4 or 60,000, it doesn't matter. When you take out one and they are gone, you do not have to worry about them again. You are moving on. So if you're like, oh my God, there's 3, boom, one shot. Now there's only 2. That's a big percentage jump right there. So just like keep that in mind. Yep, for sure. And again, kind of just to touch on that real quick, what you were saying is that this is the only time we're using deadly force is if we have to use deadly force. Nothing less is going to do in order to save my life or somebody else's life. That's the standard that you're looking at, is that there's no other option to save this guy's life. Have to do it. So since if we're assuming that we've called 911 or texted 911 or maybe another customer coming in saw the robbery and calls 911, as you hear police sirens coming, so this is a situation where we've shot, we've had our gun out. This is kind of a big deal. Like, this gunshot just happened. Maybe there's an innocent bystander. They're telling the cops as they come in. Because cops are showing up to a scene. Correct. If they don't know how to call, they don't know what's going on. A lot of people don't realize that. Like, cops do not know what are all the time going on when they get to a scene. Well, think of the game telephone. How easy was it for you get 4 or 5 people in a row, you whisper into one ear and they whisper it down, and by the time it gets to the last person, it's completely changed. Is that what that game's called? That's what. I was like, bro, what is that? Is that like Operation or? No, but I know what you're talking about. So, like, I hate rabbits. By the time it gets back, as I went to the circus yesterday and ate popcorn. Yes. So that does happen, even because you've got a witness who let's say they walked in on half of a robbery. They don't know who's good. They don't know who's bad. So we want to make it apparent. Correct. Yeah. So they relay that to the dispatcher, to a call taker, who goes to the dispatcher, who goes to the officer. Everybody's got preconceived notions. Nobody's going to know who you are. They don't know that you're a good guy. So the first thing that you're doing is that if there's no additional threats, you're putting your gun up. Make sure that, put it back in your holster. Make sure your hands are up. With your hands up, direct the officers to any threats that may still be present, and always comply with what they're saying. Again, we don't know who's good, who's bad. We don't know if it's a bad guy who came in and shot the clerk, and now they are just drawing us in so they can attack us. So be compliant. Don't try to argue, no, I'm the good guy. Just listen to what they're saying. One thing that I've done I've done it like when traffic stops. Yes, I speed sometimes. Is they pull up and like, hey, just so you know, I'm carrying right here. I just want to let you know. What would you like me to do? And someone will be like, hey, just keep it there. We're good to go. Yep. Thank you for telling me. Yep. Some like, hey, I think that's the only thing actually I've ever gotten is that's it. But I let them know, like, hey, I'm carrying. Yeah, for sure. And not one has been like, you're doing what? They're like, thank you for telling me. Right. And kind of establishing that rapport, that trust. Because I am a good guy. Right. And then I tear off my shirt and I've got back to blue shirt underneath. I hope you know I do. I hope you do. But, this Good Samaritan thing, that happened out in Colorado where a gentleman went and shot and killed an officer. There was a Good Samaritan nearby that saw it, tracked the guy down, shot and killed the suspect. Responding officers came, didn't know that
they believe that he was the guy that shot the officer, and they shot and killed the Good Samaritan.
All right,
So it does happen.
Based off of real stuff. These stuff, by the way, we're not making these up.
No.
This is stuff that actually happened. The first one happened in Memphis, you said? Was it
No, the first one was Minnesota.
Is that what I said?
Yep.
That's right. That's right here. So these do happen. So we're not just throwing like, oh, we'll make up some stuff.
Yeah.
But I think you guys are getting the point of what we're trying to say. And we want to get into the weeds on this. Are you good with the cop thing?
Yeah.
You good? So I guess the biggest takeaway, like, because I even learned some stuff about like the witness and stuff, because I'm not a police officer. I don't think like a police officer. I think more like a police officer than the average person, but I definitely don't have that training experience and a thing called wisdom. So I appreciate you being here, man. And
Absolutely.
We're going to keep doing this, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So big thing, man, protocols, training. And you can take what you've learned on this podcast or what you've heard. Please go talk with your family.
Yeah.
Like discuss it. Like, hey, babe, what would you do if this happened? Or read this post. What do you think? Like, hey, let's talk about this. It's a great conversation. It'll get your brain thinking out of the box thinking, and that's what we need. A lot of people, we have this circle. You're in the middle of the circle. To make the magic happen and to keep lives up, you need to be thinking outside of the circle, outside of the box thinking. That is the unconventional way. That is what will keep you alive the majority of the time.
The first time you're thinking about what you would do in a situation, you don't want to be thinking about it for the first time when it's happening.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
So even if, yes, there's going to be millions of different scenarios that you can come up with, but the more you play through, even though that exact thing may not happen, you may have already pre-planned something similar. So you're going to find that as you run these scenarios through your mind or with your family, there's going to be kind of a common denominator in a lot of the responses. So it's just going to put you ahead.
Absolutely. And again, like to come back to what we initially said, every situation will dictate, and this helps build that unafraid mindset, and mindset is with you everywhere you go, no matter what you do. It's always mindset, and that's what we strive to bring you here on the Unafraid podcast. And we hope you did it, dude. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Like, I learned a lot. I know guys out there and girls out there are going to learn a lot as well. We'll see you guys again to do more scenarios. I don't know if we're going to do 1, 2, or 3 more scenarios. I'll have to tell you what I'm thinking for the scenarios, and then you can. So that's it. That's our scenario show podcast here on Unafraid. We hope you guys enjoyed. Wherever you're listening to your podcasts, please comment. Give us, if you have ideas of scenarios, something that possibly happened to you. We want the reality. We want that. We don't know it all. We don't pretend to know it all. So we would love your feedback, and we hope you guys enjoyed this show. We hope that it will affect and protect a lot of people and get you guys thinking. So we love you guys. You guys take it easy and be safe. And Josh, thanks, my friend.
Absolutely.
Thank you, man.
Anytime.
All right. You guys take it easy.